So this will be a simulation of taking a casualty and going through the march process. First step is going to be taking care under fire. So you will initially have contact with your enemy. You will go into the prone and then return fire. You will shoot back until fire superiority is gained. You will make your callouts to the casualty. You will say, casualty, return fire, perform self-aid, move to cover. So you're gonna be saying more of a demand instead of a question. This way, you're not asking the casualty questions and going back and forth with them. You're just giving them straight demands. Once you do that and fire superiority has been gained, you're going to run up to the casualty. As I'm running up to the casualty, I'm going to be taking a look by doing a visual blood sweep and trying to see any blood that I see. Right now, I see bleeding right on the upper leg. Since my casualty is on the X, the only intervention I'm going to do right now is a hasty tourniquet. I'm going to run this end of the tourniquet first, so that has a less likely chance of getting tangled and maneuvered under this leg. This way it won't get twisted. I'm going to run this red tab through the buckle, and then I'm going to pull it back to me, and you can use your left hand here to hold it stable. Once you do that, you're going to take the rest of the Velcro and seat it under and make sure it's nice and seated on the Velcro so it doesn't come undone when you start to spin your windlass. This windlass rod is going to be pulled up and twisted approximately 2 to 3 times until nice and tight. Once you feel it is tight enough and or bleeding stops, then you can stop and then secure it and mark your time on the tourniquet. Once you have this, you're going to gather your belongings and then you'll get ready to move your casualty. There's a few different ways we can do this. For right now, I'm just going to get my casualty and drag him nice and low, see them up, and then move your casualty off of the X. Once your casualty is behind cover, your first step is going to be to reassess. So for right now, I want to check and make sure that this tourniquet has stopped the bleeding. I still see my blood right here, so I'm going to want to expose and assess the area. I'm going to take my trauma shears and expose up this pant leg to see where that bleeding is coming from. Once I open this, I see that there's no bleeding on this leg here. To check the back, I can sweep the back and I still have no blood. So this bleed must be above the tourniquet. For this, you can undo the belt real quick and cut open this top piece. Once I have this, we'll say I see my bleed is right in here in the inguinal. Okay, right here in the video, if this was a real casualty, you would immediately apply pressure to the wound and start packing the wound. In this case, just due to the training scenario, I am removing the tourniquet first. That deems that this tourniquet is no longer effective, so I can go ahead and just take that off. Loosen that so that the rest of his leg is still good. Now my next step is going to be using my combat gauze. I'm going to tuck this in to my shirt or my vest so then I can have it running out the top. Once I have that, I also want to prepare an ace wrap, and we can use this to wrap the wound later. When I do this, I'm going to straddle the leg so that I'm packing up towards the heart. This will make it much easier to do that. I'm going to find that bleed. When I first start, I'm going to roll up this end of the gauze into a small ball. What I'm going to do with this then is shove that ball as far up as I can into this artery. I'm going to shove it all the way up until I feel that pulsating mass. From there, you can use fingers or thumbs depending on the depth of the wound, and you can pack your gauze over one another. Now when I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I do not relieve the pressure off. Commonly, a lot of people will exchange the pressure but we'll take it off after before they get to the next finger. So when I'm doing this, I'm making sure I hold that pressure constantly while exchanging my fingers. This is going to make sure that the gauze stays up in there and it doesn't just let the gauze soak up the blood. Instead, this way, it's going to keep and maintain that pressure the entire time to help those clots form. Once you have that, you're going to hold heavy pressure for 3 minutes. Use your watch and track your time. After 3 minutes elapses, you can maintain pressure while checking the edges. You want to see if the blood is saturated all over the gauze or not. In this case, it is not, which means bleeding is controlled. My next step is going to be taking the ACE wrap, and I'm going to start wrapping around this wound. While maintaining pressure, I'm going to maneuver to the side of the casualty, and under my right knee, I'm going to place the tail end of the ACE wrap. That's going to hold it in place up here above his hip. I'm going to swap my hands carefully and make sure I maintain that pressure. If I need to, I can move this tourniquet out of my way so that it doesn't interfere with my wrap. From here, I'm going to go under the leg. You can kind of kip up the knee onto your other leg, so that gives you a small gap to work with. Right here, I'm making sure I'm still holding pressure as well as pulling my wrap up. You may have clothing that bunches up in the way, you just have to work around it. For this first wrap, I'm going to go under my initial tail that I made. I'm going to pull this nice and tight up into the butt cheek, and you want it to wrap up kind of like a thong. As you make your second wrap, you can start to take pressure off of this because your wrap is going to be really tight and holding that pressure. A very common mistake that people make is not holding and keeping this nice tight wrap. As you see right here, I don't have much wiggle room to play with because I'm holding it very close to where it's last contacted on the skin. So I'm doing that, and you can spread the gauze over that, or the ACE wrap over that gauze. And I'm kind of just maneuvering from side to side on this ACE wrap. I'm going to continue unrolling it. And another trick you can do, if you have excess wrap that will allow you to do this, what you can do is you can twist this wrap as you're going over, and it'll create a rope. This rope will act as a sturdy bridge on one side, and then with your second wrap, you can do it over this side as well. That's going to hold this piece of gauze right in place where it needs to stay. Once you run out of your wrap, you're going to take the tail end that you just had, plus the tail end you started with. You're going to make a secure knot with this. Once you have a nice secure knot, you can feel your gauze is nice and packed. Now you can continue with the rest of your blood sweep. I like to start with the neck. I'm going to go behind the neck, and I'm going to be checking my hands as I cross them, right? I'm going to check my hands after each time to see if I have any blood. Don't worry about the top right now. We're just going over the top, and we're going to look for blood. So I like to go with the neck, armpits. While I'm right here, I can check the pelvis real quick for stability. I'm pressing in on these prominent bones right here, and I'm pushing in. That should not give, as it's one giant solid bone. We obviously have our inguinal wound right here, but I still want to check this other side. Some people will do the cross finger or cross hand method like this, which is okay. For a more deliberate, you can pull up the knee and go like this and check the inguinal that way. I'm still going down the legs here, checking my hands after every time, and I already swept this leg earlier. I'm now going to move up to the arms. I'm checking the whole arm, walking around my casualty, not stepping over, and checking the arm. I still have no blood on anything else. So this is my only injury for right now. Next, I'm going to move up to airway. My casualty here has a stridor going on. So he is breathing with extra effort. So for that, I'm going to help him by opening up his airway with an MPA. With the MPA, you have the MPA as well as the lube. For this, I'm going to open the paper backing on it, but I'm going to leave it in the plastic. Mix up my lube and open the packet. Now my MPA. With this one, you can see there's a ring on the end here, which is going to be an adjustable ring depending on how long I need it to be. I'm going to measure from the tip of the nose to the ear. I notice that ends right around here, so I'm going to push this ring down the MPA. Now it is correctly sized. I can double check it, make sure it's good. It is. With the MPA, you can check it in a few different spots. Corner of the mouth to the ear, nose to the ear. And now with my lube, I'm gonna put it back here in this plastic wrap, do a nice thin layer, and sort of use this lube package to spread it over. You can use this package in here, as it is still clean, to kind of spread that lube around, making sure you just have a nice light layer over the entire tube. Make sure you try not to get any inside of the tube. Now as I do this, I'm going to be in the cephalic position, which is just like how I am right now, knees over the head of the casualty. A common mistake is people will try to go into the wrong nostril, or when they're putting this in, they'll only hold it from the tip. Sometimes with these, since they bend very easily, you may have to put your fingers on the lube as you push it down. So for this, I'm going to do a head tilt chin lift, tilting his head back towards me. Next, I'm going to pig nose the casualty and instruct him, if able to swallow continuously as I put the MPA in. Once I have this, I've opened up the nostril, and then I'm ready to insert the MPA. He's going to continue swallowing, and then it will go down. Once you have it in, if you do notice a casualty starts to cough or gag, that may be an indicator that is too far in the nose. If so, you can just pull it out a little bit, and then he will stop gagging, and then you can secure it in place. My next step for the MPA is to make sure I get my tape ready. As long as his airway is good, I'm gonna put my ear next to this nose. And now, by doing that, I see that he is breathing because I can hear and feel the breath coming from the tube. Next, I will take my 1-inch tape, pants leg method, by splitting my tape in half like this. I'm gonna make sure that MPA is back in there. Gonna split the tape. Make sure I get that secured just like that. Now the MPA is in place. Now that airway has been controlled, I'm going to move on to respirations. My first step in respirations is going to be exposing the box, i.e. the chest and stomach. Once I've exposed him, now I'm going to be raking and looking for any gunshot wounds to the chest. The major difference with these compared to something like this on the leg is that it's going to not be a very heavy bleed like this one would be, so it's going to be a bit more difficult to find. For this, I'm going to use my fingers and do a bear crawl rake to spread open the skin onto the side here, and then from up here, right around the collarbone, going to be checking this side, and then back up the middle, back down the side here, and then the end over here. I'm checking these 5 segments to make sure I don't miss anything on the front or sides, so then it's easier for me when I roll him to check the back. Now at this point, I will grab aid and litter, and I will have them set my litter up right here next to the casualty. I'm doing this right now to save me more time later on during hypothermia. What I can help him with right now is getting a blanket. There's my blizzard blanket. I'm gonna have him set that up on the litter so that I can roll him directly onto it. For right now, let's say I do have a gunshot wound right here below his nipple. Gonna grab a chest seal. If you have a team, have someone else place their hand on there, but if you're alone, it might just be faster to just grab the chest seal without covering up that hole. First, you're gonna take this gauze, clean out the wound, and then there's a couple ways you can apply this seal. It's very sticky, so it's sometimes pretty difficult for guys to get this on. You can either do a half spread like this and then apply it on like that, or if you want, you can take the whole thing and just stick it on just like that. You want to make sure that you have your gunshot wound centered and at least 2 inches around each side of the chest seal. Once you have that, you would continue raking if there was anything else on the front, and then you're going to flip him over. For this, I want to flip him over onto his right side. The reason behind that is because this is his only good working lung right now. If I were to roll him onto this side, it would put all that extra weight onto this lung and make it that much harder for him to breathe. So I'm going to step around him and go to his side over here. I'm going to throw this arm up, and then I'm going to roll him. If I had a belt still, I would grab the belt, but in this case I don't because I had this injury. So I'm going to take this arm and grab behind the shoulder and then behind his hip here. I'm going to roll him onto my legs, and I'm going to lift up his shirt and top back here, and I'm going to check those 3 segments on the back. So it looks like we only have an entrance wound, which means that bullet is still lodged in the casualty. Right here, I'll have my aid and litter take this litter and put it over here so that I can roll them onto it nice and easy. I'll get my stuff out of the way. When I'm doing this, I want to make sure it's right up against him, and then I'm also measuring the head and the feet to make sure I have the litter lined up properly. We can tuck in this blanket, and then on my cue, they're gonna raise up the litter towards me. I'm gonna take the casualty, I'm gonna roll them onto it. 1, 2, 3. The casualty will be rolled on. Since I just moved them here, I wanna reassess all my interventions. So I'm gonna be checking this, making sure this did not pop out. It is still controlling bleeding. It's not soaked full of blood. The MPA would still be in, checking that. I can check to make sure that it's still working. And then this thing would hopefully not get removed from that. Once I have that, from here, I want to make sure if he had any sort of belongings, kit, anything like that, I would throw it here in between his legs. And now from the rest of this trauma lane, I'm going to try to keep him covered up as much as possible to take care of hypothermia while I'm still going through my other treatments. That is respirations. My last part is going to be checking to make sure that that chest seal actually did the work. So keeping the legs covered up, I'm just going to expose the part that I'm working on, being the chest here. I'm going to move his hand out of the way, and now what I'm checking for is equal rise and fall of the chest. In this case, I may see a diminished rise and fall on this left side here because this chest has been, or this lung has been affected by that gunshot. So I'm gonna dig my thumbs under his lungs here into his diaphragm. As your lungs expand and contract, your diaphragm moves up and down, and I should be able to feel that if I dig my thumbs in. So I'm gonna do this and get right next to the casualty, and I'm gonna look for that equal rise and fall. In this case, I see a diminished side here. So my first step is going to be burping the chest seal. I'm gonna grab that piece of gauze I had earlier, gonna burp it by exposing the wound. Once I have the wound exposed, I'm gonna clean it off of any blood, dirt, anything that could be in the way, and I'm gonna reapply it on the exhale. Once I have that, I'm going to recheck to see if that worked. I still see unilateral rise and fall, so that means only this side is rising and falling. My next step is going to be an NCD. The NCD right here. I'm going to stab him on the affected side, right? The same side that the chest seal is on. You can crack this open. Inside you have your needle and your catheter. This is your needle and this is your catheter. So when you go to do this procedure, a quick way of measuring it is taking their arm and tucking it under the armpit And right where the pinky ends is about where your 5th spot is going to be. So for this procedure, there's 2 different sites. You have your mid-clavicular. This is going to be the 2nd to 3rd intercostal space, so 2 or 3 bones down from the collarbone, and it'll be right up here. Keep in mind when you're doing this one, try to stay outside of the nipple line here. The easier one and the more effective one is this one. I'm just going to take that hand, measure the spot, and then once I have this, I'm going to go right in here to the 5th or 6th intercostal space. Now when you're putting this needle in, a nice tip to do is to make sure that you go directly above the rib, because under the ribs are a bunch of nerve clusters. So for this guy, if he's still conscious, he's going to be in a lot less pain when you do this. So you're going to insert the needle directly into there. You're going to leave it for about 10 seconds. You should hear a pop and a hiss, and you may see some blood spurt out of this tube right here. After 10 seconds, you can go ahead, hold your catheter in place, remove the needle. You can put this back into its container so it doesn't poke anyone. And then with this catheter here, what you're going to do is the same thing as the MPA. You're going to get your tape. You're going to do the same pants method as we did earlier. So your catheter will have this. Sort of wrap this around. And then this catheter would be right in there, tucked in. Once you do that, your next step will be to reassess once more to see if that made any sort of difference. I now see both lungs rising and falling. If you did not have equal rise and fall after this, then you could use a second NCD and you would just do a line of these things, because they only work temporarily as like small bandages, basically. So you're just gonna keep working along that lung, and it's just gonna hopefully provide temporary relief until you can get to that next level of care. So that is respirations. Now I can move on to circulation. This is when I'm gonna be checking for any signs of shock, meaning this guy has perhaps lost so much blood from this wound right here that he has such a low blood pressure that his body is trying to compensate. There's 2 different kinds of shock, being compensated and decompensated shock. One is going to be compensated, right? This is going to be where this guy may have lost a lot of blood, but his body is able to compensate for that by raising his heart rate and trying to raise up his blood pressure and increase his respirations. Decompensated is where he has lost so much blood that his body is no longer able to keep up with the amount of blood loss, which is going to be a lot more serious, so then we need to give him some blood from us. So for this is where the medic can do an IV, but for CLS, this is where they can try to establish some sort of telltale that this guy may need an IV, may need some kind of drugs, blood, etc. to help the medic out. So the first thing you want to check at the CLS level is going to be CCT. That's going to be color, condition, and temperature. So I'm going to be looking at his face to see if it's perhaps pale, blue, purplish, or in a darker individual, they may be sort of a gray color. I'm going to be checking that. I'm going to be feeling the temperature on his forehead, on his stomach, to see if he's cold, cool, clammy. And then based off of that, that can tell me, hey, maybe I have some sort of condition here that's starting to arise. Right here too, checking the bilateral radial pulses is also very important. If he does have a pulse, awesome. If you feel a weak and thready pulse, that could also be a telltale sign that he has lost a lot of blood. So then that's when the medic's going to step in and do all their stuff. From here, we go into hypothermia. Look at that, we already have him in a blanket. So from here, we're just going to make sure he's wrapped up. On this blanket, you'll see there's a little orange or red strip here. You can remove this and then stick it onto the other side here. I'll then cover him up, making sure everything is covered up here. And then with this top piece here, I'm gonna sort of create a little hood for him. I can tape this up with 3-inch tape and get that all closed up. But so far, that is everything we have for March.